Well, happening now today, some new concerns about the Syrian civil war, raging now for more than 4 years. While President Obama insists he doesn't want to turn this conflict into a proxy war, there are fears the situation may spiral further out of control. The Washington Post headline in one column today reading this: how the Syrian conflict could get even bigger and bloodier. With David Ignatius writing, quote, "If Russia, Iran, Turkey, and other proxy fighters don't help put the pin back in this grenade, a more devastating region-wide explosion lies ahead." And David Ignatius, foreign affairs columnist for the Washington Post, joins me now. And David, it's great to have you on set.
Good to be here. Thanks.
It's important for our viewers to know there are columns that many in power read, and yours is one of them. And I know has really helped form some of the opinions of some of our leaders on what to do next in Syria. The question that you raised today, and really the statement about Syria getting worse, is something that's difficult to imagine considering the atrocities. What do you mean by that, getting worse?
Well, every time you think things in Syria can't get worse, they do. I think President Obama is correct to step up our support for the very brave Syrian Kurdish fighters who are really on the roll in northeast Syria. They have captured, by counts I hear from U.S. commanders, 17,000 square kilometers in that area. So it's good to support them. I think 50 Special Operations Forces is a sensible addition. We have to see that there are sharply differing agendas. This group that we're supporting is opposed strongly by our NATO ally, Turkey. Turkey regards them as linked with a terrorist group threatening Turkish internal security. That has to be sorted out.
How do we sort that out?
We talk to the Turks. There's no shortcut. If there's one thing that we've learned in this terrible nightmare of our involvement in this region, in Iraq and Syria, it's that you have to work things through and be persistent. So I know our commanders are hoping that either they or political leaders, somebody from the State Department, will sit down right now and work out rules of engagement with Turkey so our forces on the ground in northern Syria are not vulnerable.
What would be the priority as we work on some of these negotiations of political transitions and also our alliances? Is the priority today defeating ISIS? Is the priority today that Assad must go? What is our number one goal in Syria as you see it?
In terms of our interests, I think there's no question that degrading and destroying ISIS, as President Obama has said, is a priority. Our interests are engaged there. Certainly our allies' interests. Europe is being engulfed by a wave of refugees. This has to be addressed. In the longer run, putting back together Syria is obviously important, but that's the work, I think, of a decade or more. Starting on it, a meeting in Vienna, as Secretary Kerry did last week, for discussions with all the players, Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, as unwieldy a group as that is, I think is the right thing to do. Not because it's going to lead to a settlement tomorrow, but because it begins to frame the questions. This is one of those conflicts where de-escalating it, turning down the heat, is probably as much as you can hope for.
One of the challenges to covering this story now and also having discussions about it is few people have actually been to Syria or speak to those on the front line on a regular basis. In your column this week, you speak about talking to the spokesman of the Southern Front in Syria. You had a conversation just a few days ago. Tell us about that.
Well, he talked about the situation on the ground. He talked about how his forces, which are being secretly trained and supplied by the United States, had been getting pounded by Russian jets in a place called Al-Hara, which is in southwestern Syria near the Israel border. This is exactly the wrong thing for the Russians to do. This is an example of why their military intervention in Syria is so dangerous. And again, the point I was trying to make was there's a need to sort this out now with the Russians. The idea of this turning into Afghanistan, where Russia is pounding Islamic rebels that are getting supported by the U.S., getting weapons from the U.S., that's a recipe for a conflict that I think neither Russia nor the U.S. wants to see.
But of course, you've heard of the isolationist streak that sometimes in discussions in various political parties about, well, listen, if it's a regional conflict and if it gets worse, then it's a regional conflict. Maybe the borders need to be redrawn. Maybe the Middle East does emerge as something different. Maybe that's what needs to happen. What do you think of that?
I've been following the Middle East for 35 years, and if there's one thing that I've seen, it's that when the United States steps back, as President Obama has tried to do, understandably, given all the pain the country has experienced, others step forward in ways that are very dangerous for us. So I think we need to be very, very careful in this effort to get America less exposed, less involved and vulnerable. Step back gently and step back So you're sure that you still have power to affect things that matter to our national security.
But if we step back and we watch, and we've continued to watch for the last several years, children die in Syria. We've seen the atrocities too numerous to mention from ISIS. Are we guilty as well of allowing this evil to exist? Is stepping back making us in some ways responsible for what's happening? And can we, in our own history, what does that mean for us?
It's a mistake to say that we're responsible for ISIS any more than we were responsible, some people argue, for 9/11. That's just not true. The people who did these terrible things are responsible for them. We do need to be more involved in humanitarian assistance in Syria. This is one of the great humanitarian disasters of our lifetime.
Do you believe it's a genocide? We've heard that on our show.
Genocide is a word that you want to be careful with. What I know is that it's a humanitarian catastrophe. Half the population of Syria, imagine that, half the population has left their homes, and there's just more the United States needs to do. Our friends in Europe are being completely overwhelmed, and they need help. But I think if we want to be taken seriously as a superpower, the country that people go to when they have terrible problems, this is an example where we need to be involved.
And the impact for generations, obviously, is something that's another topic for discussion as well in the years to come. David, it's great to have you on set.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.